Hello everyone, and welcome back to My Therapy Room, the podcast where we explore topics surrounding mental health, well-being and child development. I'm your host, Cindy Ettienne-Murphy, and today we have a very special guest with us, Rachel James, a former deputy head, now early years advisor, and we will be discussing managing teacher stress. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Cindy. It's great to be here and have the opportunity to shed some light on this important topic.
So grab a coffee or a beverage of your choice and join the conversation. So, Rachel, you've been in teaching for 6 years and you've experienced some challenging times, and we'll talk about them a bit later. In your opinion, and based on your experience, what causes stress among teachers?
Well, Cindy, there are numerous factors that contribute to teacher stress. For starters, there's the overwhelming responsibility to help students learn and reach their potential. This can often be taxing, as teachers often feel like they need to do more than is expected of them to help their students succeed. Then there's the pressure from all sides. Senior leaders, parents, and the government are constantly asking teachers to do more without giving them enough resources or support. This can be incredibly frustrating for teachers who just want to do what is best for their students.
Yes, I think people forget the amount of pressure that is put on teachers.
There's the never-ending workload. Between marking and coming up with creative lesson plans and meeting with parents, it can be hard to find time to just relax and enjoy life, and this can lead to a feeling of being overwhelmed, which often results to stress. Some common causes include heavy workloads, pressure to meet educational standards and targets, limited resources, dealing with challenging behavior, and managing personal and professional boundaries.
When you look at the role of a teacher like that, it is really overwhelming. What effect does this stress have on teachers mentally, physically, and emotionally?
Stress can take many forms in teachers, from physical exhaustion to emotional distress. Mental fatigue from long hours, striving for perfection in their work, and increasing workloads can lead to cognitive overload and burnout. This is why it's important for teachers to have a support system they can rely on to recognize and prevent stress-related issues. Teachers may experience a variety of physical symptoms, including tension headaches, neck and shoulder tightness, or stomach aches. They may also feel overwhelmed or anxious, have difficulty sleeping, or lose their appetite. Irritability or restlessness are also common signs of stress. It's important to remember that stress is not something that only affects students. Teachers can also be affected in many different ways.
That sounds incredibly challenging. Does stress have any specific effects on the brain?
Absolutely, Cindy. Prolonged stress can physically alter the structure of the brain, affecting memory, learning, and emotional regulation. When we experience stress, the body responds in an attempt to help us survive the perceived threat. We experience a surge of adrenaline and cortisol, and this phenomenon is known as the fight or flight response. While this response can certainly help us in dangerous situations, it does not do us any favors when it is continually triggered by situations at work. Long-term effects of stress on the brain can include changes in cognition, memory, and even physical brain structure. Stress causes neurons in the prefrontal cortex to disconnect.
Given these effects, what tips do you have for teachers to effectively manage stress?
First of all, remember that you're not alone. Talk to your colleagues and develop a support network. A problem shared is a problem halved. If you need more help, don't hesitate to reach out to a mental health professional who can help you work through the stress and burnout. Next, make sure that you take breaks throughout the day. As teachers, it's easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day grind and forget to take care of ourselves. Make sure that you take time for yourself to relax and unwind. Get enough sleep, eating well, and engaging in regular exercise, and find activities outside of teaching that can bring you joy. Finally, make sure that you practice self-care. Take time to smile, laugh, and even cry when needed. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We all need help from time to time, and as teachers, it is important that we recognize when our stress levels are too high and take steps to alleviate them.
Thank you for those valuable tips, Rachel. Now, can you share some strategies to reduce stress among teachers?
Certainly, Cindy. We are all aware of how challenging the job of teaching can be, and it requires an immense level of dedication and energy, and the demands placed upon us are constantly changing. It's no surprise that many of us feel overwhelmed and stressed out. First, prioritize. If we can focus on what's most important and give ourselves permission to let go of the less important tasks, we can feel much less pressure. Prioritize your work and try to let go of things that are not important or urgent. Second, make sure you're taking care of your own well-being. Take time out for yourself. Go for a walk, take a yoga class, listen to music, or whatever it is that makes you feel refreshed and energized. Third, maintain positive relationships with colleagues and students. Remember to laugh, to celebrate successes, and to show compassion when things don't go as planned. When we create a supportive environment, we also create more positive energy within our classrooms. Fourth, stay organized by breaking down tasks into manageable chunks and scheduling time each day to work on them. This can result in better overall productivity and less stress. Additionally, having open lines of communication, both with colleagues and school leadership, can help alleviate stress. Teachers can also benefit from seeking professional assistance, such as counseling or therapy, to develop strategies for managing stress. Ultimately, finding a healthy work-life balance is key.
And how does stress typically present itself in teachers?
Stress can present differently for different teachers, but common signs include frequent absences due to illness, increased irritability or mood swings, withdrawal from colleagues and hobbies, and a decline in the overall quality of their work. Teachers may experience a variety of physical symptoms, including tension headaches, neck and shoulder tightness, or stomach aches. They may also feel overwhelmed or anxious, have difficulty sleeping, or lose their appetite. Irritability or restlessness are also common signs of stress. It's important to remember that stress is not something that only affects students. Teachers can also be affected in many different ways. We can all help create a positive learning environment by recognizing and addressing signs of stress in teachers early and providing support to help them cope with their worries and overcome any challenges they may face. I'd also like to emphasize that it's impossible to completely eliminate stress in the classroom, but we can take steps to recognize it and help teachers manage its effects. By doing so, we can ensure that our teachers have the necessary tools to create a positive learning environment where everyone can thrive.
Absolutely, Rachel, if you don't mind. Can you share with us your lowest point as a teacher, when stress got the best of you?
Of course, Cindy. At my lowest point, I found myself constantly exhausted, overwhelmed, and emotionally drained. I felt like I couldn't keep up with the demands of my job, which deeply impacted my mental and physical well-being. It began when I was tasked with taking over a very challenging class full of unruly students and a strict deadline to bring up their marks. I worked hard to meet that deadline, but despite my best efforts, it still seemed like an impossible task. I felt like I was doing badly and slipping behind, and I began to dread going to school every day. To make matters worse, my home life was suffering. I was so exhausted and emotionally drained from the stress of trying to manage the class that I rarely saw my family. The weight of trying to stay on top of the workload was starting to take its toll, and I was fighting off exhaustion in the classroom. Despite my best efforts, I was starting to slip through the cracks and becoming more and more distant from my family. Worst of all, I nearly lost my job when I nearly fell asleep in the classroom one morning. I was so exhausted and overwhelmed that despite my best efforts, I simply couldn't keep my eyes open any longer. Fortunately, the students were too fascinated by what they were learning to notice, but my line manager certainly noticed, and there were serious repercussions for what had happened. I decided that enough was enough. I knew I had to make a change or risk losing everything. I began a journey of self-reflection. I set out to understand why I had experienced such a severe burnout and what I could do to prevent it from happening in the future. In the end, I learned a great deal about how to manage my workload, taking breaks whenever needed, and reducing the number of hours spent working on school-related things. I also learned how important family and friends are by engaging with them more frequently and making sure that we take time out together. It wasn't easy, but I finally managed to climb out of the pit of burnout and reclaim my sense of energy and enthusiasm for teaching. If there is one lesson I learned through this experience, it is this: tell someone that you are struggling. Ask for help.
And how did you manage your mental health after this?
I realized I needed to make self-care a priority. I sought support from a therapist, which was the best investment I had ever made. I implemented the strategies to manage my workload more effectively. Most of them were based around organization and time management, and learned to set boundaries. That's so important. Additionally, practicing mindfulness and engaging in hobbies outside of work significantly helped me regain a sense of balance and fulfillment.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing your journey with us. It's inspiring to hear how you overcame such significant challenges. It's important for teachers to know that there is help and advice out there.
Thank you for having me, Cindy. I hope my experiences can offer some guidance and support to other teachers facing similar struggles.
And that concludes today's episode of My Therapy Room. And thank you again, Rachel, for joining us in this important conversation about teacher stress and burnout. And we really appreciate you sharing your story and your advice. It has been invaluable. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more about our views on mental health and well-being in young people. Bye for now.